coming up.
When was the Prime Minister first briefed about national security concerns surrounding the two scientists who turned out to be agents of Beijing at the Winnipeg Lab, Dr. Chu and Dr. Cheng?
I would suggest that this is a question for CSIS because, I mean, I don't know, maybe you don't watch sci-fi movies like I do, right? But if you ever watch 12 Monkeys...
Oh, I know you're crazy as a loon.
CSIS provides security background, but the president of PHAC has the opportunity to provide a security clearance. Is there a way to circumvent that program?
According to the 2022 Science Advisors report, there are 1,021 health scientists within the Government of Canada. So my question is, have you established any priorities, any initiatives relating to a review of general application to ensure that we don't have other government employees clandestinely and corruptly engaging in espionage or foreign interference activities in the Government of Canada?
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Substituting today, we have MP Angus for MP McPherson. He's wearing his blank look, but he will be here. Dr. Ellis for MP Seaback, MP Bazan for MP Kamich, and MP Cooper for MP Lantzman. And, who do we have?
Nackby, Mr.
Oh, yes, and Mr. Nackby, of course.
Mr. Oliphant.
In for Mr. Oliphant. You didn't have that on my list here.
No, because we just...
Yeah, I know.
And I'm substituting for Mark Holland, Mr. Chair. I'm substituting for Mark Holland as well.
Okay.
And David Vigneault is substituting for the Commissioner of the RCMP, so nobody's here.
Who's
properly.
really here? Yes. And I'm Anna Maria Albagetti, so there you are. We've just got everybody fooled. All right, hey, let's, on that note, let us begin.
When was the Prime Minister first briefed about national security concerns surrounding the two scientists who turned out to be agents of Beijing at the Winnipeg Lab, Dr. Chu and Dr. Cheng?
I don't have the specific information of when the Prime Minister was briefed on these matters.
Do you have, can you advise the committee when the Minister of Public Safety was first briefed?
No, I can't. I wasn't Minister of Public Safety at the time. I have no information on that either.
You are the Minister of Public Safety now, and you have ministerial responsibility. You answer not only for yourself, but for your predecessors. So can you undertake to provide those dates to committee?
I'd be happy to ask the department to determine when my predecessor may have been made aware of this.
And the Prime Minister?
I can't speak for the Prime Minister, but I'd be happy. I'm sure somebody has taken note of your question.
And the Minister of Health?
Again, I don't speak for the Minister of Health.
No, but can you
No, I don't undertake for the Minister of Health. No.
Okay. On March 23rd, 2019, PHAC received a fact-finding report that Dr. Chu and Dr. Cheng had violated multiple security and intellectual property protocols and were collaborating with the Beijing regime, including the People's Liberation Army. Why did it take 3.5 months until July 5th, 2019, before they were finally marched out of the Winnipeg Lab, a Level 4 lab?
Again, Mr. Chair, I have taken note of the testimony of my colleague, the Health Minister, who was here a week ago. He can speak for the Public Health Agency of Canada. I can't, but maybe the Director has some information on that specific sequence for Mr. Cooper's question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think in my testimony last week, I provided some key dates in terms of the engagement between CSIS and PHAC that led to PHAC hire the private company to do the investigation. So I think that sequencing has been provided to the committee, Mr. Chair.
Minister, as of March of 23rd, PHAC knew that these scientists were collaborating with the People's Liberation Army. This is a Level 4 lab. It's supposed to be Canada's highest security lab. It deals with some of Canada's most sensitive biological secrets. Again, why did it take 3.5 months before they were finally marched out? Shouldn't they have not been marched out the very next day?
And again, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the question, Mr. Cooper, but I'm not the employer of those particular individuals. You had the Health Minister and officials from PHAC here. I can't speak to the sequence of the employment relationship as between the Public Health Agency and those particular individuals.
Do you think it's acceptable that there was a 3.5 month gap between PHAC knowing that these scientists were connected to the People's Liberation Army and the time it took to finally have them removed from what is supposed to be Canada's highest security lab?
But again, I take the legitimacy of that question, Mr. Cooper, but I would want to understand what information these officials at PHAC had at what particular time and what they knew of that relationship. I take your question on face value, but I think one of the interesting and innovative things is by making a lot of this documentation available. Canadians have had a chance to see the sequence of that thing, but I'm not comfortable speaking for the Public Health Agency's employment.
Minister, would you at least concede that what happened at the Winnipeg Lab constitutes a major national security breach and a major national security failure?
I think the whole government has acknowledged that therein with those two individuals lies an example of the kind of work that needs to be done. In my briefings with the director and officials of the Public Safety Department, in many respects, I think, and the documentary evidence I think bears a lot of this out, the role that CSIS played with the Public Health Agency in many cases can be a best practice of how these things should...
My time is limited. Mark Holland testified that there are no scientists working in the Government of Canada labs that are Beijing 1,000 Talents program, that are part of the Beijing 1,000 Talents program. Can you confirm that?
Again, I don't want to revisit what Mark Holland's testimony here.
Well, he was unequivocal in his testimony. So I'm asking you as Minister of Public Safety, can you confirm that?
What would you like me to confirm, Mr. Cooper?
There are no scientists working in Government of Canada labs that are part of Beijing's 1,000 Talents program.
I don't know those details, but perhaps the director can answer that question.
Well, before he does, and I would like to hear his answer, I will expand the question to also seek confirmation or clarification as to whether there are any scientists employed by the Government of Canada who are in any way involved in PRC recruitment programs.
About 30 seconds, Minister.
So, Mr. Chair, CSIS, has been working with PIAC on these issues for a few years now. If there were to be any individuals who were engaged in any way representing a national security issues, I would be working with PIAC to make sure that they had the information to make the proper measures. I cannot confirm the specifics of our investigation, Mr. Chair, but I understand the concern raised by Mr. Cooper, and I share the issues of the threat that this represents.
And
I can tell you that it would be
Beijing's 1,000 Talents
Cooper,
program.
I'm sorry, sir, you are out of time.
Sort of building on what Mr. Cooper's line of questioning around the chronology of events that took place from the moment a patent was discovered, I believe starting around October 2018, and those two individuals, two Canadian scientists, were fired by sometime middle of 2019. And Mr. Vigneault, your testimony last week or the week before when we last met was that looking at the chronology, and I think your words were, my expert colleagues have told me that it was a fairly expeditious process. Are you still of the opinion that the process that was followed during that entire investigation, the CSIS briefing, and the steps that PHAC and the lab took were expeditious given the circumstances?
So, Mr. Chair, yes, I do continue to hold that belief that it was a very expeditious process from August 2018 when we first engaged with PIAC to give them an insider threat briefing. At that moment, they raised concern with CSIS about the two scientists, and that led to us sharing some information and some advice to PIAC. They undertook their administrative review, and the results of that review were shared with CSIS. And I think, what you see at the chronology of the documents that have been produced to the committee, you could see on the moment, the first briefing to CSIS, which we did not have a lot of information, to the second briefing where we presented the result of our investigation to that point, you could see that in that short period of time, we had a very extensive investigation carried out that led PAC to be able to take quick administrative measures to protect the lab and Canadians.
Am I reading from this that they walked out with vials of Ebola and got on a plane? When did the agency find out, and why were they not immediately arrested? How is it possible that you can get on a commercial plane with deadly viruses and carry them? Like, number one, how do you get through? Like, is this is a level 4 laboratory? Was anyone fired? Like, tell me what the investigation was, because this is very concerning.
Again, Mr. Chair, and I understand certainly that the tenor of Mr. Angus's question, but these are questions properly for the Public Health Agency of Canada. The Public Safety Department or CSIS aren't dealing with.
Well, I would suggest that
actions.
this is a question for CSIS because, I mean, I don't know, maybe you don't watch sci-fi movies like I do, right? But if you ever watch 12 Monkeys, you know what happens to the world, right? And you're thinking, wow, that's a crazy movie. And here I am reading, like, down, and all the many things that go on is they walked out of a laboratory with live Ebola, and it took another 3 years to fire them. They weren't charged. Like, how does a lab have a level 4 accreditation if someone can pick up a vial of Ebola, stick it in their pocket, hop on a flight to China and give it to them? I think all this blame on China right now is misdirected. The blame has to be they walked out of a lab carrying deadly, deadly viruses. If something happened on that plane, or if they wanted to do something with that, people would have been hurt. So what steps, surely to God, CSIS investigated this. Isn't this a major threat?
Mr. Chair, I think the question is absolutely legitimate. However, as I said, CSIS is not in the business of running the lab. This is why we went to them with our concerns about national security in 2018 to share with them our expertise. This is our job. We share with them our expertise, and then they reacted by telling us a number of issues. I believe that PAC has testified, and the documents that have been shared with the committee demonstrate how there was vials of ingredients have been transported. There are international rules for this. The problem is the authorization. So my understanding, and again, PAC should speak to those details. It was not a security issue with those vials. It was an authorization issue, which speaks more the potential espionage concerns.
So you spoke to them in 2018 because we know in 2017 the Chinese National Institute filed a patent for an inhibitor of the Ebola virus that includes the one doctor as one of the key contributors. Was she taking research that she had done in Winnipeg and being allowed to file a patent? Because she gets the Governor General Award the next year for innovation. So, again, I'm not the brightest guy on the planet, but my red flags are going off. We know that an employee came forward and raised serious questions about them in 2018. So you said you went to the lab in 2018. Was it about these two, or was it just a general meeting about things in general?
Mr. Chair, the documents are, I think, provide a level of clarity about this. And in my testimony last week and this week, I spoke to the fact that we went to the Public Health Agency and the lab to share with them our concern about insider threat, specifically about, the type of environment they're in. And it's at that point that they raise specific issues with those two individuals. Right. We launched our investigation at that point. And in response to Mr. Nagvi, I mentioned that, from that time to the moment where we were able to provide very clear indicators of significant national security concerns, it was done in a fairly
I get that, and my
frame.
time's running out. And I realize you have to be fair with people. You can't just hold them up and jail them or whatever. But when we go back to the fact that serious virus threats were removed from that and carried on commercial airliners, the fact that they were still able to go back to work the next day once it was found out, to me, is a massive breach of obligation. And how do we reassure our international partners and the Canadian public that we are going to protect them with the deadly viruses that are out there?
That's a question that perhaps we can get answered on Friday, because PHAC will be here, so you're all invited back, okay?
I just had some more questions around the talent or recruitment programs. How can you reassure Canadians that there are no further PRC-based scientists who are part of talent or recruitment programs working at government labs in Canada?
So, Mr. Chair, I think the one of the element I've talked about is the work of this committee, the work that we've been doing with public safety and with ISED, and specifically with CSIS in terms of, making sure we talk about these issues. Is very important because it's only through the knowledge of ourselves, but also of other people, that we'll be able to address the concerns expressed. By definition, these approaches are covert. They're trying to obfuscate their approach. The more we talk about it, the more the PRC is adapting its methods. I talked about the fact that this is a cat and mouse game. So the better we are, the better they are changing and they're obfuscating their approach. So the best way for it to answer the question, Mr. Chair, will be to say that we can never rest on our laurels on this. I think it's a good thing that we're able collectively to identify these two. My concern as director of CSIS is that it's a relentless effort by the part of the PRC. They are using all methods to be able to acquire technology, know-how, and data. And from that point of view, I'm not sure that anyone can provide a level of 100% clarity on this. But I think what from CISA's point of view in terms of transparency is that we are absolutely focused on the issue of talent programs. And that's why we've been talking and writing and publicizing and engaging directly with those organizations who are susceptible to be infiltrated by the talent programs.
And so, therefore, is it fair to say you still have some ongoing investigations at the current time?
Mr. Chair, unfortunately, I will not be able to speak about our ongoing investigations. Thank you.
Is it fair to say also, Mr. Vigneault, through you, Chair, that CSIS provides security background, but the president of PHAC has the opportunity to provide a security clearance? Is there a way to circumvent that program?
So, Mr. Chair, the government policy is quite clear that it's the deputy head of any organization who has the authority to grant and revoke a clearance based on the security advice that the deputy head receives. I have mentioned last week that there is that the Treasury Board Secretariat who is in charge of that policy is modernizing it as we speak. And Mr. Nagvi, to your question earlier, when you talk about the advice, I will not be providing advice to anyone, but I just said it would be an opportunity here to the work of this committee to speak to how the issue of government clearances are issued is being reviewed as we speak. So I think there's an opportunity.
Yeah, I guess, though, through you, Chair, is it possible at the current time that when these scientists were working at the National Microbiology Lab that someone could have circumvented that process? So the executive director, for instance, could say you can work at this lab without the completed work by CSIS?
If Mr. Chair, if I understand the question, if someone was to allow people to do work that requires a clearance without that person having a clearance, that would be a serious violation of the policy.
Okay.
And so I would say that this is something that would be, of course, of a real concern.
Perhaps through you, Chair, to you, Minister, why was a private security firm engaged to undertake the original investigation, Presidia, and not the RCMP in this particular case?
Again, I was not the public safety minister when these decisions were made, and I don't understand the precise delineation as to what the authorities would be of the public health agency. My understanding is that they had initially, and again, the director spoke to me about this last week, Dr. Alice. I don't want to avoid the question, and the director will correct me if I'm wrong. Public health agency of its own motion retained a private firm to do an initial review, an administrative review, not a police investigation, obviously. And that administrative review then led them to make the decisions that are properly within their purview to make. But CSIS was obviously working with other partners, and the RCMP are, I think, as has been confirmed, investigating this now in terms of a potential criminal context.
Thank you,
For
Dr.
you,
Ellis.
Mr.
Your time is up. We'll go to Madame Lalonde for 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur. Thank you very much, Chair.
I know that some of my colleagues were not here last week, and I don't want to single anyone in the room, but just for clarification, maybe as a frame to frame this, in my view, there was comments made by one of my colleagues regarding that. And that was actually quite spoken last week by the minister and PIAC extensively. They did mention that the shipment of Ebola and Epina was authorized, and there was actually no unauthorized shipment or removal of any pathogens. So it actually all went through the proper process. So, and I know, Minister, you were not there either. So just for the clarification for those that were not there last week.
So I have Chong for 4.
Chong for 4.
4.5. I went to University of Toronto with Michael, so we were in the same residence for 4 years.
What's one more?
Same residence for 4 years, yeah.
You're arguing and you're just using up your time. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, you are responsible for exercising leadership under the Act at the national level relating to public safety, in other words, relating to national security. The Act says the minister shall coordinate the activities of the RCMP, CSIS, and other entities that you're responsible for and shall establish strategic priorities for these entities. So, in light of the fact that 2 government scientists at PIAC were found to be clandestinely and corruptly participating in a PRC recruitment program and collaborating with the PLA and the PRC, I want to ask you a question. And I'm not asking a question about a specific investigation, about a specific intelligence assessment, or a specific intelligence product produced by CSIS. I'm talking about general activities under your direction as minister in establishing priorities in your portfolio. So my question is, have you coordinated and established as a priority any initiatives to review, to look at whatever you may want to call it, any reviews, any initiatives of general application to review, to ensure that there are no other Government of Canada employees clandestinely and corruptly cooperating with the PRC in areas of espionage or foreign interference. And I ask that in the context that there, according to the 2022 Science Advisors Report, there are 1,021 health scientists within the Government of Canada. So my question is, have you established any priorities, any initiatives relating to a review of general application to ensure that we don't have other government employees clandestinely and corruptly engaging in espionage or foreign interference activities in the Government of Canada?
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Chong, a very good question. The short answer, Mr. Chong, would be yes. Obviously, as we learn of these circumstances,
could you tell us the general nature of this initiative and what timeframes we're looking at?
Again, the issue, so we've heard the director and others, and it's not just at this committee, we've heard it at other fora as well. There is a sense that there's an increasing aggressivity from some of these hostile state and non-state actors. Obviously, the government of China is one of the best examples of this sort of escalating or increasing interest. So my conversations with security officials in the Government of Canada are always around, are we doing everything necessary to detect, disrupt, and ultimately eliminate these different risks to our national security? My sense is we are well served by the national security community. And again, I'm learning what is in the public domain, what maybe the director, because there's some stuff that I know specifically with respect to China, to use an example, that we're doing, but I don't know how much of that is in the public domain. But if the director could provide details to.
So, thank you, Minister. Mr. Chair, through you, the the specific set of circumstances you're talking about, the infiltration and the potential recruitment or espionage activities of the PRC or others vis-a-vis the science-led research of the federal government is not just because of the Winnipeg Lab issue, but because of other cases that we know of, has been something of importance to the government. The late Ian Shugart, when he was clerk of the Privy Council, put together a task force on research security across the government to essentially do exactly the kind of work, try to do exactly what you're saying, Mr. Chong, that needed to be done, which is bring together security, bring together the research institutes, the research department, or federal department, and essentially take these two ecosystems that need to be talking to each other much more, because as you know, malheureusement, you often have silos. The research takes place on one side, and then you have the national security on the other side. And now, through the work that was led by the late clerk, we have now put together procedures that are more robust. I think that might be something that could be shared with the committee.
Let me thank you. We're now out of time.
Okay.